Hi guys, Andy here. Today I'm reviewing the Sony Xperia Z1 Compact. I'd like to thank clove.co.uk for sending me the device to have a play with. Unfortunately I've got to get it back to them in quite a hurry, so I've had a bit limited on time to do the review this time, but I have been using it for the last 4 days. So I thought it was worth time telling you what I thought. It's quite a change from the devices I've had so far this year, starting with the Oppo N1, 6-inch, 5.9-inch, then the Lumia 1520, 6-inch, then the Note 3, 5.7-inch, and then I come to the Z1 Compact, which is 4.3-inch screen. I suppose my initial disappointment was that it's not actually as compact as I'd hoped it might be. It's pretty much the same sort of size really as the Moto G and almost the Nexus 5, just slightly shorter at the top perhaps. So I was a little disappointed in that, but as I've been using it, I've started to like the device. It certainly is very stylish and very well made. So anyway, well, let's move on into the actual review and take a closer look at the device. So I think the first thing you notice is it's very angular. So although they're rounded, those are still actually quite square, if you know what I mean. And again, the edge, if you look down the edge, it's rounded, but it still has quite a sort of squared off feeling. Personally, I like it. It's like a, it's like a slab, just a small brick almost. So I actually quite like the design of that. It is 9.5mm thick, which is thicker than most devices really, I suppose, these days, and it's quite weighty at 137 grams. So that's what I mean by it's, how does the where does the compact part actually start? It does have very pronounced buttons, so the power button sticks out quite nicely. You're not going to miss that by any means. The volume button's possibly a little close to the power, and then it has a dedicated camera button down at the base there, but I found that quite hard to use, as in theory I hold that down, I'm going to do in a second, and it should open the phone up to the camera app. Now, I mean, you couldn't particularly tell, but I had to press that very hard. If I try, see, so that, to me that was a press. I have to really press quite hard to get it to open. Similarly with taking photos, you have to press, I suppose because it needs 2 stages, it needs the focus and then the actual taking of the photo. Having said that, when I've taken photos, I'm so used to using it on screen, I just did that. But it is quite handy if you need to take a picture, but especially if I've got gloves on or something, it's really hard to know if I've pressed that hard enough to open it up. One thing, if you've seen my other reviews, I quite often go on about is the back of the device. I hate how either the camera sticks out or it curves. Hooray! Flat back. It's a shame it's on such a small device, so I wouldn't likely type 2-fingered with it on the table like that, but personally I much prefer flat back like that. Something else that is kind of cool is it's totally waterproof, so all the things like the SD card slot, the power slot, the SIM card slot, all are on, have covers, which means that it's totally waterproof. I have done a video of me popping it into the sink, making videos, playing YouTube videos, works fine. So I don't quite understand though why, when you've charged the device, so you have the flap open, you're charging, you unplug the charge, and it comes on, it tells you, be careful, one of the flaps is open, you're not waterproof. But when I turn it on now, just regularly, it doesn't give me any warning. So I assume that means maybe there's not actually sensors in the flaps, it knows, obviously you've been charging, it knows that's got to have been open, so it's saying make sure you close it. So all in all, I actually really like the design. Maybe that's to be expected from Sony. They generally take a lot of pride in their device appearances, so perhaps nothing to be surprised about. So let's talk about the actual hardware. It's got the Snapdragon 800 chipset with the Crate 400 CPU and the Adreno 330 GPU, along with 2 GB of RAM. So it holds its own against any of the new devices. It's become almost a standard for top-end devices. It does have NFC, as you can see the little symbol on the back, and unfortunately quite an ugly icon in your navigation bar the whole time at the end there, which I don't know quite why they feel the need to do that. But there we go. It's a 4.3 inch screen, I think I mentioned earlier, but it's 720p, so it's I think 1280 by 720, gives 342 pixels per inch, which is fine. You know, that's good enough for anybody, in my opinion. You don't particularly need any more than that. The speaker is reasonably loud, well, slightly louder than the N5 perhaps, but I find it a little bit tinny. Let's see if we can play something real quick. So there's not a great deal of bass.
Digital, yeah, okay. So, big story on WSJD.com. Samsung, first of the announcement.
And not particularly a massive amount of volume. It's adequate, let's say, but it definitely doesn't sort of push the boundaries by any means as far as the speaker. And to to some people, myself included, the speaker is quite important. I do like listening to podcasts when I'm getting ready for work in the morning. You may have heard me talk about the kettle test. It does not pass the kettle test. When my kettle's boiling, I've got no chance of hearing this at all. I did do a sound test video. You can have a look at that if you want to see the actual figures. So the hardware generally pretty good. I didn't mention the camera just yet. 20.7 megapixel camera on the rear, 2 megapixel camera on the front. I was slightly disappointed by the camera. I was expecting like amazing results. I did a few photos with this camera and compared them to the my Note 3. I mean, it's not, you know, that's not a bad picture. That's really good detail of my lunch on Saturday. That's a video from, and here's one in the dark with no flash. I mean, yeah, that's pretty good quality. So it is a good camera. Don't get me wrong by any means, but there was, I mean, maybe I can find the picture. What's it doing? Maybe I can find the picture I took that sort of surprised me. I had both of them. This is the one. Let's open it in an album. I had both of them. It's synced to Dropbox, and there was one was the blues were very, very sort of bright blues. The detail looked better on the church, and the contrast generally seemed, I suppose, a bit stronger in some ways. And one had this kind of bleed in of brightness from the edge. And I actually assumed that to me what the better looking picture was the Xperia, but it wasn't. It was the Note 3. You can't see it so well here. Maybe it's only when I've got it enlarged on my desktop. But there's some weird glare coming in, and the picture's slightly washed out. It was a very strong sunlight coming in from the sort of left-hand side here. It's just the Notes picture. The contrast looked a lot better. The colours looked a lot better. Again, that's not to say that the camera's bad. It's not. And I have done a video test between this, the Nexus 5, and this and the Note 3. So, you know, do have a look at those, and you can make your own decision, really. I just wasn't as impressed as I thought I was going to be. The front-facing camera did do, again, maybe I can find the picture. The front-facing camera did a very good picture, I thought. So that's good. A little on me. So I was on my way to the gym, and I was facing the sun, so that I was well illuminated. But I just thought that the detail was pretty good, was pretty crisp and sharp for a front-facing camera. There we go. So, all in all, I was slightly disappointed. It is a very good camera, but I think perhaps just what we expect now from cameras is a lot more than it used to be. So, let's see. The software is 4.3. It does say, if you look at different places, it says 4.3 with 4.4 to upgrade planned. Well, I mean, I would hope it is. It's just been released. Why would it not have a 4.42 upgrade planned? It's a little disappointing. It comes with 4.3 initially, I suppose. I would kind of want it to start right off the bat with 4.4.2, but never mind. Obviously, it has Sony's themed launcher and everything else that comes with, which isn't too bad. Now, actually, I've got a certain theme set on this, so let's go into. There we go. So I downloaded one, this woody one that we're using right now. Let's change it to the regular Xperia. Apply. There we go, that's done. Now we are back to a more recognisable Xperia looking theme. I quite like that. It's nice and easy to change themes. A lot of devices do it these days, though, I suppose, and you can download more very easily. I also like, you might have noticed one in there, so there's quick toggles at the top, which to me are quite essential these days. I really hate not having them. And you can change which ones are used in here. So I like that that's baked deep into the actual operating system. As is, and I'm going to come on to battery in a moment, I suppose, but I'll just show you. So these are things that generally you can find apps that do for you, but you've got stamina mode, low battery mode. You can so stamina mode disables background data when the screen is off. So I know, for example, I think it was Juice Defender does that for you. Disables functions in order to save power. So there's all these things to help it last even better, the battery. But I'll come into the battery in a second. I did notice as well, there's none at the moment, Facebook, I had sort of a little 6 in the corner of the Facebook. This is my app drawer. Let's see if anything else shows. There'll probably be, there we go, Update Center. So you see it's got a 1 next to it. So it kind of tells you, I don't know how many apps are compatible with that, if any app will do that, or just specific ones. But I thought that was quite cool. It tells you if there's notifications within the app. If we go right to the edge, we get to choose what order the apps are shown. I quite like there's a most used one, so it has just the apps that I use the most. But then you can't swipe, it doesn't like have all of them going down in reducing order, if that makes sense. I have to come back in and then go back to alphabetical order, and then I've got all of my apps again. You can get straight to the Play Store and other things, and then install stuff from there. So I quite like that, it's quite nice. The standard keyboard, so if we go in and say we're going to make, it is fine. It does all of the sweeping you would expect, but there's no quick. So if I hold down P, it doesn't change to a naught. You know, normally the top row will be will be numbers, etc., etc. I have to actually go in, type in my numbers, and then it doesn't. Oh, it did that. I was going to say it doesn't always switch back to alpha when I go and put certain things. It is now. Maybe I must be mistaken. I found myself quite often still being on the numbers row when I wanted to be on the alpha. But so it's not a bad keyboard. I quite like how they all jump up. Do you see that as you slide along there? But I do miss that you can't do any quick things to numbers, or even a numbers row perhaps. Now obviously you can install your own keyboard. Most people do, so that's not particularly an issue. I've mentioned already the big ugly NFC up in the corner. I don't know why it does that, but all in all it's less intrusive than a lot of other overlays can be. So I mentioned the battery earlier. Well, no, sorry, I didn't mention. I showed you the options. It's got a 2,300 milliamp hour battery. Obviously it's non-removable. You can't. I did wonder if I don't want to break it. I don't think that you get into that bit there. So 2300 is pretty big for only a 4.3 inch screen. GSM Arena, I've only had it 3 days, so it's hard for me to judge exactly how good it is. But GSM Arena rated it 30% better than the Nexus 5, and actually even better than the Note 3. Only by around 10%, but still I find my Note 3 to be a bit of a beast, and that's one reason a lot of people will buy the Note 3, is because they know they're getting a huge big battery and it's going to last for a long, long time. Now, I can tell you, I've been using this, it's been off charge at 6 o'clock this morning, so it's been 6 hours. I've been to the gym, which means I listen to podcasts walking there and podcasts walking back. I listen to music when I'm at the gym, and I'm using JFit, so the screen's on quite often. And it's at 78%, which to me is still pretty good. So it's saying it's going to go for 1 day and 7 hours, I think more than we've already done. I've already done 6 hours, so it's a day and a half. And this is on one of my heavier days, like I say, when I've been to the gym. So 6 hours and 3 minutes, look. Screen on time is already almost an hour. I don't know what that one is. So I think that's probably roughly where I was using the gym. See the screen on quite a bit down there. So it is very hard for me to judge on such a short time. I can tell you I went 24 hours yesterday, so I took it off charge sort of 9 o'clock in the evening, 10 o'clock in the evening. Now obviously then I was asleep for 6 or 7 hours, but I used the phone out and about, not heavily, but screen on time was up, I think, up over 2 hours. I'd used it for 24 hours, I was still had 40% left, and it's certainly looking like I would have a pretty good use of it today. So my apologies, I've not been able to test it better and tell you more at this point, but unfortunately I have limited time with the device. I think one thing worth noting, in forums, I've lost count how many times I've read somebody say, I'd take a little extra width in my device if I had more battery. And I think possibly that's what they've done. So as I said to you earlier, it's 9.5mm thick, which is quite thick compared to some of the devices coming out now that are sort of 8mm and less. But as I've said, 2300 is a pretty hefty battery for a device of this size. So I'm thinking that's what they decided that was a good trade-off. And I guess actually I would agree. I don't need a wafer-thin device. That's fine. It feels good in the hand, and if it means I've got enough battery to possibly last through 2 days, I don't have to charge overnight one time. To me, means that that's a pretty good trade-off. So then I would normally talk to you about hackability. It's quite a new device. It's only been around a month or so, but looking through the XDA developers forum, there don't look to be any ROMs at all at this point. It doesn't massively surprise me. It does surprise me. Disappointing, I suppose, to an extent. It'd be nice if there was a Google Play edition, although, as I say, the Sony launcher doesn't feel too intrusive. So I don't know. Maybe in time there'll be some apps. Maybe some developers will get hold of this and they will produce apps. I can live with the Sony overlay. It's not too bad. It is quite stock-like, so that's not a massive issue. One thing I didn't mention, actually, there is quite a lot of different bits of software that come pre-installed, but most of them involve some movies. For example, I could sign up, I can prepay, and I can watch movies and things. The TV one takes me to a sort of just a software that will tell. There we go, ZBox. Kind of, I was trying to think what that was called. It's right there. Kind of like a ZBox app. I don't particularly need that. There's filters on the camera. It's all fairly standard stuff, but nothing that I would particularly persuade me thinking, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll buy a Sony because of that. Anyway, so all in all, what do I think of the device? I think it's very stylish. I think it's a nice looking phone. I like the design in that it's quite angular and blocky. Some people won't. Maybe some people like the curves and things like that, but I like a nice angular device like that. It feels good in my hand. The buttons seemed a little weird at first, a bit low down, but actually I kind of got the hang of it. When you're using it, actually that's quite easy to press the power button on and off. Probably either way. You don't have to do much of a reach. So yeah, quite nice. It definitely feels well built. So that extra bit of weight does mean that it feels quite premium. It feels quite solid. I wouldn't necessarily want to drop it still, but I'd probably have a bit more faith that it wouldn't burst into 1,000 pieces than some other devices. As I've said, it's not particularly compact. Well, I suppose what's your definition of compact? It is all crammed in there quite nicely, I guess, but I thought it would be a bit of a smaller device. Compared to other devices of its sort of size, what do I think? Well, I did a comparison of all three, doing benchmarks and GPS, etc., and it certainly holds its own and probably outperforms, well, definitely the Moto G. I think it beats the Moto G without doubt, but then this is a £400 device, the Moto G is a sort of a £100 device. The Nexus 5 is a sort of £250 to £300 device, and this is £400. So how do they compare? I don't know, that's a tough call, which you prefer. Some people will prefer the Nexus because it has obviously stock Android on it. So I don't know, it is a nice device. If I had to use, if I was told, you've got to use this Xperia Z1 compact for the next 6 months, I wouldn't be too bothered. It's fine. It's a nice device, good camera, nice design, sturdily built. All around it's a pretty good phone. So I think the speaker is probably the thing that would sort of disappoint me the most. I'd like a bit of a stronger speaker, a bit better bass. But all in all, yeah, it's a really nice device. And actually, if I was going to be using devices of that sort of screen size, I suppose in some ways, as I mentioned, the Nexus 5 is not that much difference in size, but the Nexus 5 manages a 5-inch screen and the Xperia Z1 Compact a 4.3. I suppose that's a bit of a disappointment. Could they not have crammed, that's quite a big bezel at the top, reasonably big bezel. Well, all the bezels are quite big compared to other devices. But yeah, all in all, very good device. Is it a device for you? I don't know. Hopefully this video's helped you decide that. Let me know in the comments below what you think. My name's Andy. I'll catch you all again soon.